Welcome to the Chaos Sector. We return to the Matrix. My colleagues felt I did a great job, so I've been allowed to host again. Thank you, and thanks to our audience for their support. In the previous episode, we mentioned how Kamala Harris is being sacrificed, just like old Joe was. Both have shown they are not in charge as president and vice president. You had Bernie Lomax, sleepwalking throughout his presidency, and a vice president who won't answer simple and direct questions. Now think a bit deeper into that plot, though. Who would be behind that? Well, the fingers point at Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer as the core antagonist who orchestrated this conspiracy. Although they are responsible, it's actually another source. Digging deeper than that pair, it was actually plotted up by the progressives in the party. They are the real problem. Pelosi and Schumer are the old guards, but the progressives have effectively taken over the Democratic Party. They've infiltrated the party in the blink of an eye, with the likes of AOC being the first prominent so-called Congress member. Then soon after, you had the squad that was created, which included AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib. Then it grew to 9 members with the additions of Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Greg Casar, Summer Lee, and Dela Ramirez. Keep in mind, these are all Congress members. These are not mayors or governors. These individuals work to pass or reject bills that affect the American people. Most do not focus on Congress members and what's going on behind those walls, but policies are made or broken by these people. There is a subgroup of the progressive movement called the Democratic Socialists of America, and most of the squad are a part of that group. Some have stated they are not a part of this group, but who are you fooling? Each and every member of the squad has displayed and made statements that are in fact socialist. So you have socialists in Congress, based on the rhetoric and even policy ideals. This basically translates to having communists in Congress. Really? Imagine a grandfather forced to watch 9 of his grandchildren over the weekend. They will literally run him over, and the house will look like a tornado came through when the parents finally come back. The analogy here is old Joe had no choice but to abide by the radicals in the party who lurk behind those congressional walls. And we can also suggest Pelosi and Schumer had to abide by the younger and more aggressive ideology of the progressives. They kicked old Joe to the curb and then replaced him with his vice president. But it's starting to become more and more evident that she wasn't ready to be pushed into the spotlight. Unlike my colleagues, I think Harris had potential, but it was squandered away due to identity politics. Never mind her past record, being labeled the most liberal senator and such. Heck, there are plenty of wacky politicians running around getting support on both sides. But the key issue is that if Harris would have taken her licks in a humble manner after her 2019 presidential campaign, where she was exposed by Tulsi Gabbard, it would have allowed her time to regroup, rethink her political future, and come back stronger. Waited in these past 3 years and ran again as a more experienced and tougher candidate. Gained more respect, became more transparent to the American people, and it would have also gave her a window to review all of her plans, which she could propose to the nation in democratic debates and potentially a presidential debate. Yet instead, she jumped at the opportunity to be vice president. Putting that into context, she wasn't ready for that job. I mean, it's obvious. You're being asked to be the vice president of the United States. Aside from your job in general as vice president, which Harris wasn't prepared for, she definitely wasn't prepared to step in as president if old Joe had to step down. Didn't take the time to review what a vice president's role was, obviously. And definitely didn't truly grasp the magnitude of being a representative on the global scale. Neither. So although I did give her the benefit of the doubt, unfortunately, like this photo, Harris is classified as a political airhead by many. Now this would be considered mean and politically incorrect by some, but the more respectful description isn't much better, you know? How do you respectfully describe someone who is not only inexperienced, deflects from questions, lacks the ability to articulate a message, and is uninformed or is being negligent about key policy issues? How would you describe this person? And see, that's the problem. And she is aware of this image and has been pushed into a corner where it's fight or flight. But the problem presents itself for her is how does she fight, which translates to convincing the American people that Trump isn't right about her, nor her policy proposals in the past are not a reflection of the current administration and state of the country. And despite the policies she has updated on her campaign website, until she literally speaks to the American people in a debate about these policies, she doesn't have a plan. And the longer she avoids challenges from the right-wing media, who will obviously push her in that corner. Having interviews with Oprah Winfrey does not motivate independents, and even moderate and conservative Democrats. It's preaching to the choir, and politically, the goal is to convince the middleman and middlewoman to vote for you. And then that was also another example of Harris in flight mode, as opposed to fight mode. In that interview, Harris once again floated around direct questions from Oprah and her audience. This led to the headliner of, quote, another epic word salad from Kamala Harris. Quote, during the interview, Harris told Winfrey that Americans are an optimistic people, adding Americans, by character, are people who have dreams and ambitions and aspirations. We believe in what is possible. We believe in what can be, and we believe in fighting for that. Okay, now, there's nothing wrong with this response, if you're being asked about Americans in general, as you're describing the character of Americans. But when you're being asked, what will you do to help American citizens overcome economic hardships? This is literally blabbering. Okay, then she goes on to say such, quote, that's how we came into being because the people before us understood that one of the greatest expressions for the love of our country, one of the greatest expressions of patriotism, is to fight for the ideals of who we are, which includes freedom to make decisions about your own body, freedom to be safe from gun violence, freedom to have access to the ballot box, freedom to be who you are and just be, to love who you love openly and with pride, freedom to just be, unquote. Now, obviously, everyone gets the point Harris is making, but this is an example of a word salad in response to a question about policies. One could suggest that this is a casual interview where Harris is not truly obligated to provide any sound proposals to the nation. But here's the problem. The interview was premature anyway. Let me explain. This type of, quote, casual interview is supposed to be done when Kamala Harris is selected as the vice president, which she already had several casual interviews, of course. And then, when she is actually the president after winning the presidential nomination. You don't have this interview, which is considered casual, during a presidential cycle, and from such a major influence in Oprah Winfrey. Here's the irony. It's actually an honor for Harris to be interviewed by Oprah Winfrey. More so than Oprah being honored to interview Harris, you see? But there were actual questions about policy, which Harris floated around. Quote, during the event, a member of the audience asked Harris whether she would reintroduce a border security bill that Congress previously blocked. Harris said, quote, my work and my career has always been about saying, let's fix the problem. Let's address the needs because we know it's within our capacity to do that. Okay, so now I see why my colleagues resort to using profanity in the episodes because it's frustrating. Vice President Harris, I would like to know if you would reintroduce the border security bill that Congress previously blocked. Would you introduce the bill? My work and my career has always been about saying, let's fix the problems. Let's address the needs because we know it's within our capacity to do that. So you know that's my stance. So you will reintroduce the security border bill then? Like I stated, my work and career has always been about saying we need to address the problems because we have the capacity to do that. We know we do. So that capacity of knowing we can fix problems allows us to actually fix the problems. My career has always been about fixing problems. I don't get it. I'm confused. You see? That is a word salad. And actually, we shouldn't apply that phrase to what Harris is doing. She is literally stomped, and that's why she can't answer the questions. Realizing that her interview may turn into a train wreck for Harris, Oprah steps in to keep it from being a national disaster, which it already was if you break it down. Quote, Winfrey then asked Harris to answer the question firmly as to whether she would reintroduce the bill, to which the vice president replied, absolutely. And when I'm elected president of the United States, I will make sure that bill gets to my desk, and I will sign it into law, unquote. Now, if we break this down, Harris was basically forced to answer the question by Oprah because of the pressure of the question coming from such a high-profile figure. But an audience member who is a potential voter of Harris, she didn't feel that same pressure. Yet it's a bit misleading in that dynamic. See, Harris actually felt tremendous pressure from the audience member, perhaps because she wasn't expecting that question. thinking that Oprah is on her side. So her audience is also on her side? Walk in the park, right? The question caught her off guard. And as always, she resorted to the brain glitch of not being able to think about policies. Envisioning herself in that position of power, making tough decisions. Again, she wasn't and isn't prepared to be a president, nor the vice president. But when it came to attacking Trump, no stutters, no brain glitches, no floating in space, direct, clear, and precise responses. That says a lot now, doesn't it? More cognitive processing when addressing Trump, but cognitive clogging when addressing your own case for president? Cognitively inverted. And then Harris claimed that her economic plan is favored over Trump's, citing Goldman Sachs as a reference to this claim. Oh my days, she was fact-checked on that even by the left-wing media outlets. But let's get back to the issue about reintroducing the border security bill. Referencing back to her policies on her campaign website, we review this plan. Quote, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz believe in tough, smart solutions to secure the border, keep communities safe, and reform our broken immigration system. Okay, that's a lie in the first sentence. Illegal immigrants have brutally raped and murdered American citizens. Even other illegal and legal migrants not only crossed the border illegally, but in several incidents they knew the individual was a criminal who had already committed prior crimes in the United States. So, well, why even review the rest of it if the first sentence of the plan is a flat-out lie? You know, I think I need a coffee break.
Stay calm. You're just experiencing the chaos. Quote, Vice President Harris went after international drug gangs, human traffickers, and cartels that smuggled guns, drugs, and human beings across the U.S.-Mexico border. When did she do this? Because how can this be her record when she did the complete opposite as vice president? First of all, this is misleading. Pay attention to the actual individuals she so-called went after. International drug gangs, human traffickers, and cartels. But it doesn't say anything about Harris going after illegal immigrants, who make up a large percentage of those same crimes. You see? An international gang member could be anyone from another country. The same with most of the other offenders. But we all know that this so-called policy is alluding to Harris being tough on illegal immigration. Yet, there is not one single case cited of Harris as Attorney General that provides evidence that she, quote, went after illegal immigrants who were a part of international gangs, human traffickers, cartels, and gun smugglers across the U.S.-Mexico border. But see, they think, by mentioning the U.S.-Mexico border, that this somehow implies that those individuals were illegal immigrants, right? But they never describe those criminals as such. You know why we know she never went after illegal immigrants? Because there was no mention of Immigration and Customs Enforcement as a component of so-called going after those international gangs. What agency did Harris employ as Attorney General? No mention of a federal agency such as ICE. So which law enforcement agency did she use? Let me guess, California PD, because those individuals were residing in her state. So of course you do something about individuals already in the country. And that's domestic crimes within your state, where the criminals just so happen to be international gang members. You see the framing of this record? No illegal immigrant was cited. No illegal immigrant was arrested, charged, and deported in this record. So when you are asked, how will you crack down on illegal immigration and the crime? You can't go to this as a source of proving your record on said issue, because how do we know those individuals are illegal immigrants? We don't, well, we know just based on the context. But if it is not specified that illegal immigrants went after for crimes committed at the U.S.-Mexico border, it's a vague and misleading record. And I have to stress this point. If none of those criminals were cited as being deported for such horrible crimes Harris cracked down on as Attorney General, then what did she do with those international gang members if not deporting them? Pick your poison here. Either they were kept in the country after being arrested when they should have been deported, or these individuals are a figment of the imagination, on her record, of course. Because she's stuck in a corner after they have been arrested. Let's continue. Quote, as vice president, she supported the bipartisan border security bill, the strongest reform in decades. The legislation would have deployed more detection technology to intercept fentanyl and other drugs and added 1,500 border security agents to protect our border. After Donald Trump killed the border deal for his political gain, she and President Biden took action on their own, and now border crossings are at the lowest in 4 years. Their administration is seizing. Okay, let's stop right here because this is madness. Where are the fact checkers? Don't worry, we'll do it. You want to know why that bill didn't pass in Congress? Here's why. U.S. Senate unveils $118 billion bill on border security aid for Ukraine and Israel. What's in the bill? Okay, let's find out. Quote, the U.S. Senate on Sunday unveiled a $118 billion bipartisan border security bill that would provide aid to Ukraine and Israel, but it promptly slammed into opposition from the House of Representatives. Quote, I urge Congress to come together and swiftly pass this bipartisan agreement, President Joe Biden said, also praising the migration measures in the bill, which took months to negotiate. However, House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson declared it dead on arrival if it reaches his chamber. Unquote. Now, do you want to know why Mike Johnson and other Republicans rejected this bill? Quote, in addition to $20.23 billion for border security, the bill included $60 billion to support Ukraine in its war with Russia, $14.1 billion in security assistance for Israel, $2.44 billion to U.S. Central Command in the conflict in the Red Sea, and $4.83 billion to support U.S. partners in the Indo-Pacific facing aggression from China, according to figures from Senator Patty Murray, who chairs the Senate's Appropriation Committee. An additional $10 billion would provide humanitarian assistance for civilians in conflict zones, including Ukraine, Gaza, and the West Bank. Okay, that's enough of this nonsense. It's a bunch of fuckery. $118 billion slated the border security bill, but approximately $100 billion of that is not for border security. In other words, spending money to secure the border makes up less than 25% of the fucking bill, while funding for another country is the bulk of the bill. Do the simple math on this. $20 billion subtracted from $118 billion gives you what? About $98 billion. Now, if only $20 billion is proposed for border security, which the bill is being named for, or better yet, is supposed to be the center of focus in the bill, what makes you think any sane person would agree to this bill when you're spending $98 billion of the $118 billion on foreign aid instead of what the bill was originally drafted for? Of course, it would be slammed with opposition. It's a no-brainer. It's like proposing to pay a $100 tab, then drop 10 cents on the table as your payment. Keep the 10 cents and get out of my face, you fucking slimy piece of shit. Democrats do this all the time. They did it with the Inflation Reduction Act bill. Even old Joe admitted that they should have called the bill what it was, a fucking climax change. Named it the Inflation Reduction Act, giving the illusion that the bill is to reduce inflation. But in reality, it was nothing more than a bloated bill for climax change. Which is an example of Democrats just using money to wipe their fucking snobby noses with. So for Harris and Democrats to claim that Trump rejected a so-called bipartisan border security bill for political gain is not only a lie, but it's a lie to the American people. That's the main issue. It was a mockery of securing the border. As this administration, in the first 100 days, ended the construction of the border wall, basically labeled ICE agents white supremacists. Yes, that would be Kamala Harris. And they allowed a record number of migrants, including a huge population of illegal immigrants, into the country who have committed some of the most recent cruel crimes. And get this, the claim that border crossings dropped after old Joe and Harris took action? Yeah, well, I would agree border crossings dropped, when you are literally flying them into the country on planes, you fucking anywho. And even more so, they were, oh, get a load of these sick fucks. Migrants have been using an app called CBP-1 to apply for asylum and enter the United States. Now this app is being used in Mexico and other Central and South American countries. Here's the slick tactic. If someone applies for asylum using this app, there is no way to vet them. There's no real way to tell if they are genuinely applying for asylum or if they are using that as a shield to be verified through the app and then processed, making for a, quote, legal entry into the country once they arrive. You see? Then the app itself was a part of the plot. Does anyone recall that this administration gave $4 billion to Central America? Well, guess what some of that money was used for? These CBP-1 apps and its development. So when old Joe and Kamala Harris told them to stay in Mexico and don't come, it really translated to just stay in Mexico. You can illegally enter the United States from thousands of miles away. Oh, really? Okay, thanks. So by statistics based on submission in the app, this administration would claim that there are X amount of asylum seekers. Some bypass the waiting period and just cross the border illegally anyway. Again, migrants who cross the border using that app do not get screened for asylum. They are screened for national security and public safety, but not asylum. So if they are not actually seeking asylum and are trying to enter the country, then they have just committed fraud. Sure, we can say some feel the only way to enter the country, the quickest way, is through that process. They may not be violent people, criminals committing violent crime, but it is still a crime to commit fraud on an application. And then when they enter the country and are given a notice to appear in immigration court to request for that asylum, some of them vanish into the shadows, and those cases take years to decide. So technically, by law, you have non-violent illegal immigrants in the country. There's a huge percentage of these types of illegal immigrants as well. Some of them work and send money back to Mexico, yet never apply for citizenship. Some end up working at many businesses and never become a naturalized citizen. And of course, some end up lurking around, trafficking drugs, sex trafficking, raping and murdering people in neighborhoods all over the country. And if that wasn't bad enough, there was another app, which apparently has mysteriously vanished after the border crisis reached dangerous proportions. An app called Bienvenidos. Are welcome in English? Yeah, this app was designed to literally guide immigrants and illegal immigrants on how to cross the border without being detected. Yes, this is not a joke. An article by Medium from 2018 breaks it down. Quote, Bienvenidos app, best immigration routes to cross the US-Mexico border. Bienvenidos is the world's first community-based navigation app for immigration. Get notified about the most efficient routes and entry points. Receive alerts on border patrol agents, drones, ground sensors, and hidden camera locations. Be warned of hazards and obstacles like heat waves, dangerous river crossings, and wild animals. Unquote. Wow, now we click that link, and lo and behold, the website doesn't exist anymore. Go figure, this is fucking insanity, right? Now they try to make it appear noble, such as genuine migrants who are seeking asylum or desiring to become American citizens can utilize this app to navigate the treacherous terrains and stay safe in their journey. Yeah, well, if that were the case, the website would still exist. The purpose of that app was to guide illegal immigrants through that terrain and stay undetected by having a digital layout of the region, avoiding border patrol agents, drones, ground sensors, and hidden cameras. Think about how sophisticated this app is, right? And here you have Kamala Harris claiming that if Trump would have agreed to the so-called border security bill, it would have, quote, deployed more detection technology to intercept fentanyl and other drugs. Well, I have a question. Who created this Bienvenidos app? We're going to assume it was created around 2018 during the Trump administration. Heck, development may have started years prior. The federal government, in partnership with tech companies, created the app, just like they created the CBP One app. This is where millions and billions of dollars are invested, disguised within bills such as the Inflation Reduction Act. Yep, they hide it well, but we dig deep to find it. The federal government pays tech companies to create such apps, which allows illegal immigrants to maneuver through regions at the border, evading border patrol and surveillance cameras. I mean, this administration had already been caught conspiring to provoke illegal immigration. You had immigrants who spoke little English, calling Joe Biden's name, saying he will help them get into the country. And although that guy may not be a criminal and may apply for citizenship, it proves that old Joe and Kamala Harris were welcoming immigrants to a degree that provoked illegal immigration. After all, creating an app called Bienvenidos is all you need to know. And this is perhaps why the former border czar Roberta Jacobson got the hell away from this administration. She's like, farewell, you crazy fucks, not dragging me down with your clown show. This is all going to blow up in your faces. You have to keep in mind, if she had stayed and potentially remained the border czar, that boulder would have fallen on her head. Jacobson saw the boulder coming and left so fast she forgot her damn car keys. In conclusion, the border security bill wouldn't have stopped any of these aforementioned crimes because it wasn't about securing the border whatsoever. The lack of money invested into border security proved it, so don't call it a border security bill. Republicans rejected the bill because Democrats wanted to spend more money on foreign countries, but disguise it as a proposal to secure the border. Republicans weren't falling for it and rejected it faster than you can blink your eyes. And that's why Republican House member Mike Johnson stated, quote, "It was dead on arrival if it ever reached his chambers." See, Democrats assumed if they sprinkled in a bit of money towards border security, it would convince Republicans to vote in favor of it. Not sure what drugs they're smoking, but they must have forgotten that Republicans are literally watching them conjure up these mischievous plots. But let's continue. There's a bit more. Let's focus on the claims about Project 2025. Quote, Donald Trump is a convicted criminal who only cares about himself. He's proven that time and time again, from caving to the gun lobby and doing nothing to address gun violence, to killing the bipartisan border security deal that would secure our border and keep America safe, just to help himself politically. Okay, let's stop briefly here. Why do I get the feeling that these are the words of Tim Walz? This does not sound like Kamala Harris. It sounds like an even more radical person than Harris, and as we all know, Walz has no problem lying and deceiving the people. Can't get any worse than lying about your military service. Anywho, if elected president, Trump will implement his Project 2025 agenda to consolidate power, bring the Department of Justice and the FBI under his direct control so he can give himself unchecked legal power and go after his opponents and rule as a dictator on, quote, day one. Of course, this is projection or gaslighting, where everything they are claiming Trump will do, Democrats in fact done against Trump. Nobody is falling for it. Well, I can't say that entirely. Not only will Trump fall to tackle violence in our communities or fix our broken immigration system, he will make us less safe. You know, anyone who visits this campaign website and read these statements would have to admit, yo, this is not true, man. I mean, come on, no need to just flat out lie about Trump. I'm starting to question if Harris is trustworthy, right? He says we should, quote, get over gun violence, and he is pushing for more guns on our streets and wants to arm teachers in our classrooms. He'll advance his cruel immigration agenda, which includes separating children from their parents, and he is refusing to commit to accepting the results of the 2024 election if he loses a second time. Unquote. It's official. This is not Kamala Harris. This is Tim Walz. It reeks of his radical, communist, anti-American stench. Although Harris is radical, Walz is 10 times worse. He has already tasted the political power of being a governor of a state. He has the ego trip of upholding his military service as a badge of honor to be respected and praised. And of course, he is an operative for the Chinese Communist Party. This man of his mind and these words printed in Harris's policies reflect a literal psychopath. And karma is a bitch, because just like Harris betrayed old Joe, Tim Walz will definitely betray Harris. He is eyeing the granddaddy of them all, becoming the president of the United States. He already has it mapped out. And the download is complete, my friends. We see it all unfolding. I would have to agree with my colleague about Harris. I have a bit of sympathy for her, because in a way, she was a deer caught in the headlights. Sure, we can say she was an opportunist, but she didn't or doesn't truly grasp the vast landscape of how dangerous this political matrix can be. Harris doesn't truly grasp the threat of a war with foreign adversaries. She doesn't grasp concepts like treason and covert Chinese operatives infiltrating American politics from within to transform the United States into a communist hellhole. That would be running around with her in her presidential campaign as her running mate. She doesn't see it. She doesn't truly grasp how this person is using her to push his communist policies, and then she will be blamed for those policies. Because, hey, the vice president follows the orders of their boss. Tim Walz is a different monster, my friends. He is not your typical vice presidential running mate. If this ticket is elected, it would be a foreign adversary literally inside the White House as vice president. And guess what would eventually happen? World War III. Tulsi Gabbard warns of this. Yeah, she knows what is brewing. Kamala Harris is oblivious to what ulterior motives that man has standing alongside her. Yet it was the same scenario with old Joe, having Harris standing alongside him. Perhaps he knew Harris was up to something, because, old Joe is not stupid, my friends. But Harris, on the other hand, has been in her San Francisco bubble most of her life. Her worldview is limited, so a jumpy and excited running mate in Tim Walz may motivate her, inspire her, and all. Yet if only she knew what he was truly up to, she wouldn't have accepted him as her running mate. We roast old Joe all the time. But there is no way old Joe would have selected Tim Walz as his vice president, because he knows how dangerous he would be. And that proves the point about Harris being naive. Her worldview is limited to San Francisco mainly, and barely about the country as a whole. Tim Walz knows this, and he would love nothing more than to whisper in her ear about foreign policies, which she would absolutely be lost and confused about. Pushing and pushing, to provoking her to start a war with foreign adversaries, and Tim Walz would sit back and laugh, as the United States would be in World War III. But before that would even happen, there may be a civil war in the country. Either way, a maniac like Tim Walz and his family and friends would be safe from the chaos, looking down at the madness with a sinister grin. Just like warhawks such as Nikki Haley, Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, yeah, you can't hide. We could suggest war is inevitable, meaning Trump could be reelected and a war would still ensue. But I'll tell you this, Trump as president better be your choice. At least there's a strong leader representing the nation. Not sure if Kamala Harris would get over dropping her cell phone and freaking out, let alone having people try to assassinate her. Strength is what the United States needs right now, not bubbly vibes and wacky goofballs. Now, bringing this full circle, all the way back to the initial point by my colleague, it is the progressives in the Democratic Party who are responsible for this catastrophe. They kept bamming on the door until they finally got in, and now that they're in, it's a madhouse full of socialists and communists penetrating the defense of the core values of the nation of America. Listen, to all the women out there and soy boys who are supporting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, I hope you've saved up enough money, and although you are anti-guns, you might want to invest in some form of self-defense. Better stock up on perishables, gallons of water, things you need in states of emergencies, because if your votes bring about a Harris-Walz administration, I don't think you'll be able to survive on your own. But then again, self-inflicted wounds can't be blamed on anyone else, right? This is the Chaos Sector.